Hello, everyone. So many amazing, familiar faces. So I'm glad to be here today. And Kent, I was waiting for a joke. I was told it's every other week now, so I picked the wrong week.
Come back next week.
Yeah, I'll come back next week.
There you go.
So today we're going to talk about generations, and employee engagement is such an important topic in the workplace right now. And in many times we think of the generations as employees that work for us. We don't realize also they are our customers and suppliers, and it's so important to be able to understand the different generations so we would be able to engage them and get the best out of them. So when I ask you a question about, okay, the clicker doesn't work. So if I ask a question about what do you think about when I say the word new generations, what comes to your mind?
Retail store and bathroom.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I missed it because I was trying to figure out the clicker. But retail stores. What else? Children. Okay. Yeah. The new generation. Technology. Yes. I heard something come from here.
Going in a lot of different directions.
Going different directions. Anything else? Okay. Excuse me? Service oriented. Yeah, they're so focused on changing the world and making a huge difference in the community. Absolutely. What else?
Snowflake.
Okay, there's something coming from there. Delayed adulthood? Okay. Wow, this is going to be such a fun presentation. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, we heard something here about selfish, because when we look at different generations, we view things differently. So what we may appear selfish to us may be normal to them and for the next generations. I'll take a couple of more. Impatient. Tons of student deaths, and we're going to be talking about that one too. Yes. How many here work for LSU? Okay, so I have a surprise for you later. Not a pleasant one, but coming up.
Snowflakes.
Snowflakes, what does that mean?
Very temperamental and sensitive, and overly sensitive.
Oh, okay. So let's think of good things. What are good things about them? Yeah, I can't leave you at this note. They're passionate. Yes, they're very passionate. They love to travel the world, and that's why I like the book that we have for today, which is Going Places. So they want to explore, and what's amazing about them is there's no geographies or boundaries that are stopping them. We are all one around the world, and it's amazing.
I was thinking, they think outside the box, just kind of automatically.
Yeah, thinking outside the box. Yeah, challenging the norm. So many people, when they hear the word millennial, they are automatically related to something not totally positive. And whenever I give speeches, regardless what I'm talking about, regardless the topic, there's always someone in the audience, and they ask, what do we do about those millennials? Especially the grandmas. Like if there's a woman in the audience, she's like, what do I do with my grandchildren? They don't listen. They're so, all of these things that you talked about. So it is, obviously, there is a disconnect between the generations, and it's so important for us for the presentation to start working so I can tell you more about it.
No pressure.
Okay, so I'll start the presentation without slides. So many people, when they think of the new generation, they're automatically assuming that the world ends with the millennials. They don't realize that there's so many other generations after the millennials, and they are right now graduating from the universities, and they are entering the workforce. They are Generation Z, and so many people don't even realize that they exist. I think the millennials created such a big shock in the system for the corporations that they just don't know what's going to happen next. They're still trying to figure out what is happening. So when I ask you about what comes to your mind,
He'll advance the slide for you.
okay, I'll do that.
The next slide.
Okay, so every time I think of the new generations, remember with all the phrases you said, I look like that. Like a chicken was so shocked about this new generation and how much they know about technology and how this is, like, regardless if we are allowing it or not, how much all of this advancement of technology is happening faster and faster. Okay, so here's where I started. Before I talk about the generations, I want to mention to you some of the funniest stories that I love about the new generation. That is going to be very much linked to a lot of the themes we're going to cover. So to do that, I'm going to tell you about my nephew, Ian. Ian is 5 years old. And Ian, last year, he got a little small red dot on his toe, like so tiny, like barely he could see it, but it concerned him. So he went to my mom, to his grandmother, and he said, "Grandma, can you see this red dot?" And my mom said, "Yeah, but it's like not a big deal." And he said, "What is it?" She said, "I don't know, Ian." He said, "Can you Google it?" So Googling is a big deal, because in our situation, we think we need to know everything. With the new generations, they don't. They can just Google whatever they want. And also, Santa's list. So if you remember the letters you used to send to Santa, what did it include in terms of the things you had on them? Bike? Toys? So you would write the word TOYS? Yes. So you would actually write it. So what he did last year, he went on Amazon, the Amazon app on his iPad, and he would be searching for the toys, and he would see, on Amazon how they give you the like if you buy this, most likely you're gonna like these other items. So he loved that. So he would go and he would find the product code, and he would write to Santa a letter that has 0017335. Next line, 92321. Imagine when Santa gets this letter. I wonder what generation Santa is from, if this would mean anything. But Santa is lucky this year. He's not going to get a page with all codes. He's going to get screenshots, because Ian now learned how to take pictures on his iPad. So he's just going to be like, chick, and he's going to have a whole screen show for Santa to be able to know what to buy. So this by itself, don't you think it gives us a whole different perspective of the shift that we are living with? And one thing we need to realize, it's not going to stop anytime soon. It's going to get more and more technology focused, more and more faster, and many people that are complaining about the millennials and the new generation, I have something to tell you. It's not going to change. We need to change. We need to adapt. If we want to empower them, we need to adapt to them. If we want to increase our sales, these generations have a big percentage of consumers. We need to adapt. If we want to create a positive, healthy work environment, we need to adapt. And that is a lot of, it's difficult to even think about it, especially with the individuals that have already conceptions of how these generations are, and they're watching TV all the time or on their iPad all day, but we need to get the best out of them. So when we think of generations, usually we think of 4 generations in the workplace. There is the builders who are 70 plus, and many people, they still have to continue to work. So they are still in the workplace. We have the baby boomers, and then, of course, Generation X and Generation Y. And that's Generation Y where people think that the world ends. They don't realize that there is also Generation Z. And this is the newest thing in town that we need to be able to know how to motivate them and encourage them to be at their best. But even there's also Generation Alpha, who are right now about 7 years old. So there's multiple. And the interesting thing about these generations is that everyone has its own values and different way of motivating them. So it's not like one way is not going to work across these generations. We need to learn how to adapt to all of them. Okay, so Generation Z, newer than the millennials. So anybody here that thinks the world ends with the millennials? Well, not really. And they are really very, very different. So with my work with IBM, I managed and led, I can't count them, but like over 1,000 millennials. And I got used to them. I got to learn how to engage them, and I got used to them texting, and I'm used to this stuff, because to me what matters is that the result is achieved at the end. I don't care if they're texting during the day. But then, as now I have my own business for the last 2 years, and I have interns, amazing interns from LSU, and I realized that something is different. At that time, I didn't know of Gen Z. With this new generation, they seem so much more focused, extremely dedicated. They get the work done and go above and beyond what I expect. Maybe Cindy sent me the best of the best, but I think this is also very much of the new generation, where they are more focused and they are here to drive a positive change. So when I think of the millennials, I think that they are such a positive disruption to our system. We needed them. Whether we like it or not, we needed them. Because we were just so comfortable. Things are going the way they have been always going. And here we are, we're just like so shocked with what is going on and how we're going to motivate them. But I think now with Generation Z, we're going to get a break. It's going to be a positive, because their mentality in a way is very similar to a lot of the people here in this room. So they are our digital darlings. And with Generation Z, as if they are born with an iPad. I don't know what's going on right now, but they are like, they're tiny little things, and they're doing this on the iPad. I'm like, how do you know? How do they know what to do? But it just comes so natural. They're digital natives. So Generation Z, you're going to hear multiple names of them. So there's the iGen, the post-millennials, all kinds of names. But what matters is we call them Generation Z. So right now, as I mentioned, they're about 22 years old. So it is a big deal for everybody here in the room and everyone around the world. And what is interesting about them is they are so connected with each other. They can relate and connect with each other around the world, even with other Generation Z that they have never met, more than other generations within their same family or community. Their brain works very, very much. They're 2 billion globally. Imagine, they're 25%, 26% of the U.S. population, and most people don't even know about them. So as now I start talking about their characteristics, think about how they're going to be influencing not just business, but also politics, and a lot of important things that they are really coming to drive a positive change for. They contribute $44 billion to the U.S. economy. One-third of the so by 2020, they'll be one-third of the population, 20% of the U.S. workforce, and 40% of the spend. And we don't know about them. So let's learn a little more about them. So with the millennials, we heard a lot of the things you mentioned. So tech savvy. I have here the positive list. I didn't include the other stuff you said. So we'll pretend you didn't say them. So tech savvy, tolerant for others, communicate with text. So you remember how much that I had so much resistant texting. It was so hard many years ago. But now it's not just about text, it's about emojis. You can say a whole thing with an emoji. They share everything on social media. They are now focused. So you hire them and they want to become the boss. And you're like, well, you don't really know, but they want everything now. They're optimists and they want to be discovered. Here I am. Discover me. So now with the Gen Z, they're very different. So they're not just tech savvy, they're tech innate. They are born knowing how to use IT. It just comes naturally to them. And think about all the opportunities that we can use in order to improve processes and create innovation and take advantage of this amazing skill that they're born with, all of them. They're very accepting to others. They communicate with images. And that's something I realized the last maybe couple of years, where people started using the emojis a lot. So the happy face and the sad face and all of these different emojis, and I'm like, initially I resisted them. I thought they're silly, but now I use them every single day, even though I'm not a Gen Z, but they're bringing that into our world. They believe that you cannot express enough with the word happy, how happy you are, but if you have an emoji that has a lot of happiness, that's going to communicate so much more than a happy word. They make things, and they love YouTube, so they don't need to be in a training. They don't need to be locked in a whole day training or 2-day training. How many of you here get locked many times in 1 or 2 day training? You're going to lose them. They need smaller amounts of training at a longer period of time, but they would want to learn how to, they need to learn how to learn through using YouTube, so they can go there and they can get anything they want. They're future focused, they're realists, they know that they are born and they are handed a mess. Like politically, economically, socially, all kinds of things that they would need to fix. Think of all the financial situation that they have to like in a way to take ownership of, and they realize that. And then they want to work for their success. So they're not expecting, they're not privileged, they want to work in order to get their success. Okay, so what do they value? In many generations, each one values different things. And this one, what I love about it is they value security and stability. So as a business owner, as a manager, as a person who is selling products, think about what you can do in order to create a sense of security and stability, because that's what is going to attract them. In the past, we had many companies that motivate their employees through fear. They're not going to last in those environments. Or the traditional way of leadership, the micromanagement, that's not going to work. But if we are going to help them feel safe and secure, they're not going to leave. So it's going to be very different experience than what we had with the millennials, who enjoyed the jumping from one job to another. So Generation Z, again, they're visual, they need to see emojis, they need to see pictures, they need to watch videos. That's how their brain works. They're very connected, they're connected with each other around the world, and they relate to each other so much more than they can relate to other generations. Of course, we talked about technology. They're born, they know how to use the technology. They're financially responsible, so they're going to be so much more careful of how they spend their money. And it's going to be a whole different experience compared to what we saw with the millennials. So they're going to be a little more stingy. And that is going to be linked to education, which we're going to talk about next. They're realists, they're social, they want to create a better world. They're here to make a difference in the world. And obviously, this is so great for all of us. And what we need to do is support them as they are doing that. And diversity, and this is my favorite. They are born in a world that is very diverse. They go to school, there's a lot of diversity. So if they go to an environment where they don't see diversity, they're not going to feel comfortable in that environment. So think of all the challenges we have right now of diversity and inclusion, and companies struggling to implement it, and metrics and all kinds of stuff. In their world, they expect it, so we have to have it. And as a result, a lot of the initiatives that we're working on right now may not be needed in, let's say, 10 years or so, because we hopefully by then will have so much more appreciation for each other and a better diverse and inclusion for workplace, for our society, and for everything we touch. So now, education, and this is so critical. I met recently a young graduate from LSU, and she's not a resident. She wasn't initially a resident of Louisiana, so she had to pay a lot of the tuition. She just graduated in May with a degree in history. Guess how much is her student loan? $60, higher. $80, higher. Higher, $115, higher. $125. $125. This little girl, 22 years old, she's graduating right now with a degree in history, that she's so confused, she doesn't know what she's going to do with that degree. She got a government job, and now she is so much struggling. I hear stories like this all the time. And the challenge is, it's not that the system is expensive. In many universities, and I'm not just talking about LSU, a lot of the universities that I work with, they are not really preparing the students for the real world. And as a result, they're graduating with a degree, they're graduating with a prestige, they're feeling good about themselves, but they don't have the skills that the employers need, or the skills that would help them to start companies. And this generation is realizing that. The Generation Z, they don't want to be in this place. So right now for the education system, there's a new challenge coming, which is Generation Z believing that even though education is so important for success, they also believe that it is too expensive and they would rather just go and work. So think about it. So here, 62% are open to joining workforce out of high school, and this is a big deal. So think of, they're most likely going to go take some courses on YouTube. This is going to change the training and development for companies. This is going to change a lot. And that's going to put the education institution in a place where they have to show ROI to these new students. Like, come, we will ensure that you're going to graduate with real life skills that would help you. And we're not going to have you graduate with $125,000 in student debt with a history degree, and the only place that you're able to get is a government job. There's nothing wrong with government job, but it is really limiting them, and this generation is going to challenge that. So now, at work. So with the millennials, I know when we started with IBM working on the millennials and trying to create the agile environment and the place that would fit the millennials, we would put down the walls and create an open space, and they cared so much about the teamwork, and they don't everybody has to leave with a trophy. Well, with this Generation Z, they don't like that. They like their private space. They like their own maybe cubicle or an office where it's not as much that let's all conquer this together. And they want to be competitive. They want to be recognized for who they are and for their work. So that is a major shift too also for our workplace of how we are going to prepare. Especially now, so many companies. So if you think of like the big companies, Google and Facebook, when you imagine the workplace, they have toys and colorful stuff and swings and all kinds of things in the office. Well, now with this new generation, there needs to be a whole new restructure of thinking, but also in the environment, and also with the employee engagement. How do you engage them by understanding what is important for them? Okay, so these are some statistics. I got them from a father and a son who decided to dedicate their life right now on understanding Generation Z. The son is a Generation Z, and the father has a PhD who understands all kinds of generations, so it's a lot of fun. They went to a lot of companies and surveyed thousands of these companies, and, excuse me, not the companies, they surveyed thousands of the Generation Z to understand what is important to them. So 91% say that the company's technology sophistication will impact their decision to accept a job offer. So if a company is not at the same level or close to what they need, that is a big deal. Think of a lot of the companies you work with. How technology savvy, and are the processes making sense? Are you using technology every day, or is it a little behind? So that's going to affect a lot of things. 75% willing to start at the bottom and work their way up. And that is very positive because it's different than what we experienced with the millennials. 61% willing to stay 10 years at a company. So that's also very positive. 56% would rather write their own job description. How fun is that? And they like to write their own title. I wrote some of the titles that I got from the research. They have Duke of Solution, Experienced Ninja, and then the Chief Inspiration Officer. So these things are important to them, and it's just a matter of learning how we're going to adapt that. And it's hilarious because when you think of our generation, we grew in a place where we wanted to work hard to become a manager, and then to become a higher level manager, senior manager, and then a director and a VP. So as if they're coming to really mess this structure that is very logical in our brain. So communication will never be the same, and this is how it's going to look like now. It is tons of emojis. And the interesting thing is that some of them don't realize that this is not the norm, and they end up using it with customer interactions too. So they're happy that they won the bid, and they send the customer a happy face. So, and to them, it is normal. To them, again, the happy face, like this happy face that is crying, that I don't know if it's really happy or sad, but this is telling so much that if I type the word, I'm crying, or I don't know anyone who would do that, or I'm happy, it is so much more meaningful for them. So Gen Z, what are they looking for in an employer? So now, write down some notes. There's important things coming up. The fitting culture, this is so critical. We are really the first time in the world ever where now the employer has to create a culture that would be adaptable to the new generations. I know in my situation, when I started with multiple companies, this is the culture and I had to adapt to it. If I don't like it, I can leave. One time my manager even told me I wanted to take a vacation and go to Jordan for like 2 weeks. And there was a policy you cannot take more than 1 week at a time. And I said, well, can you do an exception? And he said, well, if you don't like it, feel free to leave. But that was a lot of the culture we lived in. It's very much fear. You take it or you leave it. But now it's very different. It is we have to be able to create an environment that is fitting for them. Different advancement opportunities, and this is something I love. So my work with the talent development and coaching companies, I realized that a lot of companies, they don't have a career path for their employees. Their employees may be doing their job right now, but they don't understand where are they going to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And if you don't build that vision, these employees are going to feel stuck. And with this generation, it's very important for them to see the career path. It's very important for them to feel that their employer is investing in them and wants them to grow. The stuck thing doesn't work anymore. And then dedication to a greater cause. And some of you may be thinking right now, well, not every job you have is going to have a greater cause. Who thought of that? Oh, okay, none of you. So, but it doesn't have to be that every job has to have like this amazing, meaningful, purposeful thing to it. I was talking to a local business owner just last week, and he was mentioning that one of his employees, she's 22, which is Gen Z, and her job is mainly work with Excel all day. It's very boring. And he's like, well, I cannot make this meaningful. She's not going to change the world by doing that. And I said, well, it doesn't have to be the same job. What are you doing to help her understand how this job is going to help her get to the next level? Help her understand what skills she needs to develop now in order to advance. Maybe give her the responsibility to plan the team event once a month. So this way it's something meaningful. It doesn't have to be that every job is changing the world, but we need to change our mindset and understand what is important to them and continue to provide it. And then employee diversity, which I mentioned earlier, it is so important to them. You take them to a place that doesn't have diversity, they're not going to fit there. And their input heard and recognized, and this is in a way linked to them writing their job description. It doesn't mean that they have to write every word, but they want to feel that they are contributing to what they are going to be measured on. Something will never change, and it is the importance of human connection, and that's what they understand. It's very different, again, from the millennials. Millennials loved the virtual interaction, so we saw a lot of things that happened with, like, in the last few years, the podcasts and the webinars and all of these things. This new generation, they appreciate the face-to-face. They want to sit with their manager. They want to be interacting with their team, and this is very meaningful. And I love that because it is bringing the human element even more and more into our workplace. It's not only about the paycheck anymore, but about a possibility to be part of something bigger than themselves. So think of what are your team doing, and think about how can you explain it to them to make it meaningful. It could be as simple as what they're working on is going to help with the company's bottom line results. One of the companies I worked for was Intuit. I was an intern as I was working on my master's. And the VP of procurement reached out to me and asked me to create some charts and boring stuff. And I'm like, I felt so offended. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm a master's student and you're giving me some data to do charts for you? That's what was going on in my head. I didn't say that publicly. But then he called me and he said, I want to explain to you why your work is so important, this project. He said, when you're creating these charts and graphs, I'm going to use them to present to the CEO, and I'm going to help the CEO understand the value of our team and all the cost cutting and the relationship we're doing with our suppliers. Once I understood that, it shifted. It's not like I'm a data person doing boring charts. I'm like, wow, I'm the person who's creating the chart that's going to go to the CEO. And then how do you think my energy shifted? Absolutely. And that's something we need to think about. It doesn't mean you need to give a meaningful job that will change the world for every person in your team, but think how you're going to make it, help them understand the bigger picture and the purpose that they are contributing to your organization. And this is your new employees. They are getting prepared right now for your team. These are going to be your clients. These are going to be your suppliers. And again, what we need to do is ensure that we are adapting to them. So takeaway, the main takeaway. So if there's one thing I want to leave you with is, well, maybe two things. One is things will not change. So things will not go to the way they were. Things are going to continue to progress the way these generations are demanding. And they're coming with huge numbers. That's one. The other takeaway is that we need to adapt. It is so important. It's hard to adapt. It's so hard, especially when they do some funny things, like they come to a client meeting and they're wearing jeans and they're sitting and they're texting. But it's our responsibility, don't you think, that we need to ensure that we are helping them grow. We are speaking their language, because right now what I see, so many people are speaking two different languages, as if they're speaking Chinese, we're speaking English, and not a lot of people are able to communicate. So create a safe to fail work environment. So the first one is to connect with their passion, with their company mission. So ensure that they are understanding the company mission and they are aligned. It is aligned with what they're doing. Create a safe to fail environment, and that is also extremely important, because right now in many decades it has been more motivation by fear. You mess up, you're fired. And this is not going to work in the future. We need to help them to experiment and come up with new ideas and know in the meantime that they're going to fail. And what matters is how are we going to coach them in the meantime. And then discuss their career path, which I mentioned earlier. Create a pipeline of talent that you're going to develop for the future, and ensure that they understand that you are thinking about their progress and you care about their growth and growth professionally. And then focus on community outreach initiatives and social responsibility. And this could be something so small, where you're doing initiatives that is helping the community, where they realize that your focus is not just the bottom line, which a lot of companies, their focus is just the bottom line. Instead, your focus is creating something good in the community that they are part of. So now I want to see, before we go to the slide back, if you have any questions and how we are on time. Oh, 101. Okay, let me share with you two things that I want to give to you as a gift. And anybody who has questions, feel free to go ahead and email me. Here's my email address. But I mentioned multiple times about the talent development pipeline, or creating a talent for your team. I created an extremely simple document using Excel. So if you would like to access it, just email me and I will send it to you. In a way, it would help you to understand how to create a vision for your team and how you're going to develop them for the next 10 years. And then the next gift from me is an ebook. This is not specific to Generation Z or the millennials. This is about employee engagement in general. And it is an ebook called How Not to Lead a Team Climbing a Volcano. So if you would like to get access to it, again, just email me. You can get both of them. Just email me and I will go ahead and share it with you. So it has been a pleasure presenting to you. It's an honor to come back to the Rotary Club. And I'm here with a lot of answers. If you have questions, just email me or come now and we'll get to talk. Thank you.